what would they say about justification to perform that kind of therapy? I'm just curious. It all sounds like it's bogus, mad scientist-ish. We're happy to have back Mr. Bruce Wiseman for a third program. This time we're going to be talking about coercive psychiatry and human rights. I thank you again for being here. To the Grace Unfiltered Podcast, where we talk about body, mind, and spirit through the transforming lens of grace. We are going to be watching a video like we have in the first two programs. And rather than getting an overview from you, why don't we just watch it? And then I'm sure there'll be many questions that come up or comments that you'll have.
Founded in 1969 by the Church of Scientology, the Citizens Commission on Human Rights investigates and exposes psychiatric violations of human rights. From its international headquarters in Los Angeles, California, CCHR documents psychiatry's invasive and destructive practices and publishes its findings, making them available in some 15 languages. More than 12 million copies have been distributed to healthcare professionals, government officials, educators, and business leaders world over. The headquarters is also the site of the world-renowned exhibit, Psychiatry, an Industry of Death. Centered around 14 documentary films, this state-of-the-art exhibition presents the history of psychiatry, from its origins, where the mentally ill were caged like animals, to the present-day mass drugging of society as the cure for invented mental disorders. Traveling versions of the exhibit visit hundreds of cities across 5 continents, opening the way for hundreds of thousands to discover for themselves the dark truth behind psychiatry. What is today a global human rights movement began more than 30 years ago with a fight for the freedom of one individual, Victor Giori, forcibly committed to a Pennsylvania psychiatric hospital.
He was interviewed by a psychiatrist who said, "I can't understand a word this man is saying. He's incoherent, obviously a paranoid schizophrenic. Commit him," which they did. Now, he wasn't babbling incoherently, he was speaking Hungarian. We filed a lawsuit against the hospital. In the middle of the case, the doctor, who was the head of the hospital, stands up and he says, "We want nothing more to do with Victor Giori."
The release of Victor Giori was the first of thousands of cases throughout the world, helped by CCHR.
CCHR challenged involuntary commitment laws throughout the United States and internationally, and what we found was that people were being incarcerated without any legal rights.
They had no right to an attorney. They could be drugged, shocked, lobotomized without their consent.
Example, Australia, 1977, where CCHR exposed a psychiatric practice called deep sleep treatment.
Patients were being knocked unconscious with a cocktail of barbiturates and other psychiatric drugs, and they were being subjected to electroshock treatment daily, sometimes twice daily, without their knowledge. Deep sleep treatment had led to 48 deaths.
It was CCHR that investigated it, exposed it, and fought for over a decade until deep sleep treatment was banned. In South Africa, CCHR exposed psychiatric camps where mental patients were kept and brutalized and then farmed out as slave labor. In Italy, CCHR worked with legislators and the media, conducting raids on psychiatric hospitals, the conditions of which were barbaric, and CCHR got them shut down. In Japan, CCHR exposed the financial crimes of psychiatrists and hospitals that were defrauding the government and taxpayers, the guilty were tried, and the hospitals put out of business. And in the United States, CCHR uncovered a billion-dollar fraud in the nation's largest chain of private mental health facilities. 600 federal agents conducted raids across 20 states. Dozens of prosecutions ensued, millions of dollars in fines imposed, and the entire chain of corrupt hospitals was permanently closed. And behind many public warnings you see today about psychiatric drugs is CCHR.
CCHR has documented the side effects of these drugs, has taken evidence to the FDA, has gone to Congress, has obtained congressional hearings.
It took 13 years before the FDA finally admitted that those drugs can cause suicide and issued black box warnings. We got 9 state laws passed. Following that, it was the introduction of the Child Medication Safety Act in 2004.
Over a 3-year period, due to the efforts of CCHR and others, there have been more than 60 government warnings exposing the dangers of psychiatric drugs.
People do have problems in life. Sometimes they can be very serious. But the last thing you want to do is hurt them, and that's what psychiatric treatment does. There are alternatives. There are treatments and methods that will actually help people without the violence of drugs and electroshock. And they're economical as well. And that is a threat to a vested interest that is making billions of dollars from psychiatric drugs every year.
History has shown that virtually every workable treatment, every one that has been available for the seriously mentally disturbed, people who actually need help, has been suppressed or shut down by the vested interests of psychiatry and the pharmaceutical industry.
The public's largely been getting their information from the industry that benefits on putting them on psychiatric drugs. It's an advertising campaign. It's not science, it's marketing.
CCHR is causing things to change by being champions for a growing number of well-intentioned people who are risking their professional careers to speak up against the abuses of psychiatry.
Having that support from a group like this has made a tremendous difference in what I feel personally that I've been able to accomplish.
I think of CCHR as fellow soldiers.
I'm unaware of any other organization that does the kind of work that CCHR does, particularly on the scope and the level that they do.
CCHR has been very effective at moving the ball down the field, one at a time, one state at a time, one legislator at a time.
CCHR has had the resources to be able to teach and have legislators become more aware of what the problem with the psychotropic drugs are.
CCHR has researched the issue. When you need the facts, you go to CCHR.
Today, CCHR has over 250 chapters in dozens of countries around the world. Wherever and whenever psychiatrists abuse human rights, CCHR takes its message to the streets. From the United States to Japan, and from Canada to the United Kingdom, prominent members of CCHR lead marches to secure the protection and freedom from psychiatric abuse for everyone.
It's essential that CCHR does their job and gets the support to do their job, because the extent to which they do, the whole vehicle that's out of control about psychiatry gets to be contained and gets to be eliminated. It scares me to think if this doesn't happen. I've seen up close what it's like. It scares the daylights out of me.
You have 100,000 people electroshocked every year. You have 17 million children worldwide taking mind-altering drugs. You have people being involuntarily committed every 75 seconds, and it's all under the guise of mental health.
The only way that you are going to get humane treatment into the mental health system is to take psychiatry and the vested interests out of the picture. And only then will you see people truly obtaining mental health.
You have two choices. Either you pretend you knew nothing about it, or you do something about it. With knowledge comes responsibility. That's why we're here. That's why people are joining forces with CCHR.
Thousands from every faith and walk of life have already joined. CCHR investigates and exposes psychiatric violations of human rights, and will continue to do so until psychiatry's abusive and coercive practices cease and human rights and dignity are returned to all. Your help is needed. Join us in the fight.
Good for CCHR. And just for clarification, that stands for Citizens Commission on Human Rights. I want to encourage everyone at this time to see the first and the second episode on the two topics preceding this topic, where it has a much broader introduction of why I wanted to have you as a guest, and also it gets more in depth as well on Mr. Wiseman's bio introduction. We abbreviated this for the sake of time, but it's also lends itself for the importance of seeing the first two podcasts as well. But anyway, I wanted to also mention, because you were featured on that and what you were doing as president, and also Jan Eastgate was also introduced in that video. And I wanted to read a quote by her, and it sounds like she is the international president.
That's correct.
That's it. But based in U.S., because this is a bigger problem in the U.S. now than any part of the world. So it makes sense that she would be here. But I did sense an accent. So she's from another part of the country, but she serves here in the U.S. for the international.
She's from Australia.
Okay.
She's the one that got deep sleep treatment banned in Australia. But the international headquarters is in Los Angeles, which you've seen, and that's where Jan relocated to the U.S. some years ago, and that's where she is.
Oh, that's great. I want to read this quote. I thought this was good. Psychiatry is the greatest fraud of all time. It is also the most dangerous. That's a very strong statement, but a good one, based upon what we've been discussing in these first two programs and what we've seen played out on the videos. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get into our Q&A portion, is there anything that you would like to say after having seen that? And again, it was more about CCHR, but is there anything else that you want to say about your time serving, or anything that stands out as we just watched that?
No, I hadn't seen that recently, and it's kind of refreshing to step back and take a look. I've spent 20, 25 years as the U.S. president, and accomplished some. I'm proud of what we was able to do working with Jan and so forth. So CCHR continues to get stronger and stronger, and slowly, and I think we're going to get to that. Psychiatry and psychiatric tortures are beginning to come under the view of the UN and the World Health Organization, and hopefully we'll get them banned, Timothy.
Well, that's good to hear, and that kind of ties in with my first question, hopefully I didn't steal your thunder, but what do the UN and the World Health Organization reports say about ending coercive psychiatry, which is our topic for this particular episode?
Right. Well, they say exactly that. This is a monumental expose. Both the UN and the World Health Organization have issued international statements claiming that the so-called psychiatric medical model. Now, the medical model, Timothy, is drugs, shock, psychotherapy, lobotomies. Those three
not still practiced today, is it?
Oh yeah. Lobotomies.
Yeah. Or even the chemical. I know that the the one that's very evasive probably isn't, but the chemical. I mean, is that still performed today?
Yeah, I mean, you get chemical lobotomies from some of these psychiatric drugs, the neuroleptic drugs that we showed in the first clip, damage the frontal lobes of the brain. right up here. They basically destroy these frontal lobes. So it's basically a chemical lobotomy. As mentioned in that clip, and as I said before, about 100,000 people a year still get electroshocked in this country. Most people I say that to, they don't believe it. About 100,000 people a year. A psychiatrist runs 400 volts of electricity through the brain and calls it therapy, when a 5-year-old knows not to put his finger in a light socket. I mean, it's outrageous. Anyway.
Well, let's break those down a little bit. You mentioned lobotomy, or some form of that, which is targeting the frontal cortex of the brain, and electroshock. Those are two things that I think most people listening would think would have been outlawed years ago, if not decades ago.
Yeah.
What on earth would be the reason to isolate the frontal lobes of the brain, and I guess you're saying basically deaden it or render it inactive? Is it because that's a violent part of the brain, or what? I mean, why? Why would they even think about that to begin with?
Yeah, you're asking a logical question. Here's the answer.
Money. It comes down to the almighty dollar.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That and control. They seek to control behavior. Any activity that a psychiatrist doesn't like, they call it a mental illness. As I said before, there is a billing Bible for psychiatric mental disorders. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or in short, it's called the DSM. The last time I looked, there were 384 mental illnesses in that book. The introduction to the third edition said, this is published by the American Psychiatric Association. It said, we don't know what a mental illness is. We can't tell the difference between one mental illness and another mental illness. We can't tell the difference between a mental illness and no mental illness. How does the 364 diagnoses get into that billing Bible? They're at a convention. They sit around in a committee. How many people think ADHD is a mental illness? Show of hands.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes.
I think that, yeah.
Now they can bill for it. Now the pharmaceutical industry can create drugs for it.
All about the money. All about the money. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the fourth one, and I don't mean to jump ahead. If nothing, I'm giving a little commercial for it. You mentioned control, and I would imagine that's a big part of the education, particularly teachers, because they want kids that are compliant. And if they're acting out, the first thing they think about is some kind of a sedative type drug that's going to help them better in the classroom.
Yeah.
In essence, they're kind of controlling the classroom or controlling that particular student. So a little commercial for the last one. About electroshock, though, what do they say? And when I say, I'm talking about the psychiatric community. What would they say about a justification to perform that kind of therapy? I'm just curious. It all sounds like it's bogus, mad scientist-ish, but what would they say? Do you?
Let me see if I can answer this in a way that works well for your audience. You had said in the introduction comments that your show is about body, mind, and spirit.
Correct.
And
through the lens of grace, but yeah, we cover all three.
The psychiatrist can't stand spirituality. They invalidate religion. They invalidate man as a spirit. They think that a man is nothing other than meat, and that's what they treat. They damage the brain because they think that's going to fix something. That's what they say. What they actually think, Timothy, you'd have to, dig into the DARP. I think you said you showed a book or a play on Satan. This is that side of life, psychiatry.
Wow. Yeah, it's that spiritual, demonic side of things. It sounds like it really does, because it doesn't sound like I don't like to judge someone's motives. It sounds like they are thinking more about their profession than they are the patients in which they're serving.
Timothy, they don't have a clue. I've debated these guys for years. They don't know what the mind is. They, honest to God, don't have a clue what the mind is, and they know it. And so they continue to pretend that they have solutions to mental disorders, and it's a lie, and they know it's a lie. In the depth of their being, they know it's a lie.
Yeah, it definitely sounds satanic, for sure. Because I remember reading "Money is the root of all evil" somewhere, and you said it's the dollar. It's financial.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the love of, and it's not money. It's the love of money, and it sounds like this industry really has a unhealthy love for money. But anyway, so. Here's another question, or here's the first question, What forms of coercion still occur in the U.S.? And I think this was a question that I had planned to ask before we just had some of those interactions. And it sounds like the two we were talking about still occur. Are there any that we haven't talked about that people would be shocked and surprised occur besides the chemical lobotomies and the electroshock therapy?
Well, in terms of the kinds of things that occur in terms of abuse, beyond the treatments or beside the treatments are the things that we touched on a bit earlier, and we may get to this later, but in the field of education, the child interrupts the teacher or butts into line, and the teacher, that's not true for all teachers. I'm a licensed teacher. I've taught at the college level in California, so not all teachers are bad. Mm-hmm. But 46% of the ADHD diagnoses come from teachers referring, because using the example that you talked about a few minutes ago, the kid runs around, he's anxious, the teacher wants to control him. Good, give him to the school psychologist, and we'll get him drugged. And that remains in my mind one of the major crimes of the century. I repeat the number: 6 million children. 6 million children are on drugs, and they're told they can't learn unless they're on a toxic chemical cocktail.
Yeah, they're like guinea pigs, only not in a lab, out in the world or in the classroom, getting responses from the teacher. Well, is he better? Well, maybe a little better. I can see how. I know I personally felt that way when I was being treated for ADHD. It was like, okay, well, let's see how this works. And all of the test drugs were harmful. My heart was racing. I'm like, I can't do this. Well, let's try another one. Like you said, a cocktail.
Right.
So then we're a combination. So, it's all too familiar with me. I can't imagine, being a parent and dealing with this as well as the kid themselves. So thank you for mentioning that. What steps should governments as in plural, and I guess this is more of an international question, take to end coercive psychiatric treatments?
Oh, there's a long list of things that could and should be done. Assuming psychiatry stays as a recognized profession, which in my opinion it shouldn't be, but assuming it does, among other things, it should be mandated that if somebody comes to see a psychiatrist, they should be mandated to do actual medical tests. Is there a
blood tests, blood draws, that kind of stuff? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Okay. But they don't do that. They listen to the mother talk about the kid for 10 minutes, or the kid talk, and okay, he's got ADHD, he's got bipolar, he's depressed, he's this or that. It's just an opinion.
Real. Nothing chemistry, like a blood test. It's just
zero.
A conversation like we're having.
Yes.
They do it in a quote professional Q&A in terms of psychiatric or psychobabble, and then they determine a diagnosis just from talking.
They just make them up.
They make it up. Wow. Good stuff. I mean, bad stuff is the content we're talking about is good stuff, but it's bad stuff that we're talking about.
We sent people in to various psychiatric offices with cameras in their lapels or whatever, and the person talked about this disorder, is having this trouble or this trouble, and the psychiatrist diagnosed him with a different mental disorder.
This was undercover, you say? This was like an undercover kind of investigation kind of thing? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you know how it works. That's kind of like being a fly on the wall, so to speak.
That's right.
You can see how it works. Yeah. Wow, firsthand experience. Well, that's hard to defend that then, especially in a courtroom setting, making an argument for what's happening in the field of psychiatry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't belong in the courtroom.
Oh, yeah. It really sounds like it's a sham. A sham, a demonic sham is what it sounds like.
It's a very good description.
Yeah. So as we think about wrapping up this segment or episode, what would you or could you say, in addition to what we've already discussed, about coercive psychiatry and the rights of human beings?
Well, I think what the one that has my attention, although there are various, but is the growing ability for state governments or down to the school district to remove a child from the parent's custody because someone thinks that they're mentally ill or something along that line. In other words, an assault on the family, assault on the relationship between a parent and child. And that's it's a problem. And it's a growing problem, certainly in California here. And that one, has my attention because it removes the child, it removes the parent from the child's care. And I consider that evil in the extreme.
Oh, for sure. How frightening for the child.
Exactly.
Oh, my.
Exactly.
And disturbing for the parent. I mean, it's just, it's sad in so many levels and horrifying at so many levels. And we are so glad that you are here to expose this on our podcast. And it's hard to find grace in that, but we do know that there's the grace of God, and we do talk about that on our podcast. But we're going to stay focused on the mind aspects of this. But God's grace is sufficient for people, for parents, for their children when they find themselves caught up in this. And we certainly want to plug the Grace Unfiltered podcast for information that they can receive on that subject, particularly from a spiritual standpoint, to find some hope. Again, we thank you for being back a third time, and we look forward to your fourth in a series on the topic of psychiatry's influence in education and religion. So we look forward to having you back to discuss that. Thank you again for being with us.
Thanks, Timothy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye. If today's episode stirred something in you, share it with someone who needs light. Follow us at Grace Unfiltered Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Until next time, stay real, stay rooted, and keep walking in grace.